Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and today was the Austrian Grand Prix. It's a track I like very, very much, and we had a pretty entertaining race. By far the best Formula 1 race so far in 2023. We got some actual on-track battling, and it was really good. And it doesn't take much to have a great Formula 1 race. I think it is just down to track choice, because the cars here can overtake each other. There's a lot of DRS, but we still got a lot of overtaking in the actual corners rather than on the straights. It was really, really good. And I would actually like to see another race in Austria every year, because we had 2020 when we had two Austrian Grand Prix. We had the Styrian Grand Prix. Do that again, that was awesome. Just have 20 races at Austria, fuck it. Max Verstappen won again. I don't think anyone can really be too surprised by that at this point. What I was surprised at is, when I was looking at the table, I realised Max Verstappen has only dropped 21 points this year. And by that I mean he's 21 points away from the absolute maximum he could have scored. That's insane. That's not just a dominant car, that's not just the best driver in the best car. That is absolute confidence and precision and a soul bond between driver and car. It's on the level of Sebastian Vettel in 2013 when he won 9 races in a row. It wasn't just it was the best driver in the best car. It's just it was everything together. Everything fit perfectly like a puzzle, and because of that he just went on this amazing run of victories, and Max Verstappen could do that. I could see Max taking 4 more wins in a row easily. Can Red Bull win every race this year? I think that's unlikely. Surely at some point there's going to be a mistake or some reliability issue. The season is very, very long, and the closest we've ever got to one manufacturer dominating like that is McLaren 1988. They lost out on one race at Monza when Senna got taken out by Jean-Louis Schlesser whilst leading, and I think Alain Prost broke down. And that was the only race all year. In the 80s, it's honestly, McLaren back then were just unstoppable. It was incredible how dominant they were in an era when reliability was not guaranteed at all on a race-by-race basis, even though they were replacing car parts like they were going out of fashion. So I think what Red Bull are doing this year is pretty incredible, but to go the whole season, it would be nothing short of a miracle. Honestly, like, you just expect there's going to be a race where something's going to happen, and it's just 22 race wins in a 22 race season. I don't see it ever happening. But I think you can almost certainly say Max Verstappen is going to be champion this year, unless something incredible happens from one of the other teams and just an upgrade for Ferrari that propels them ahead of Red Bull so far that Leclerc dominates the rest of the season. Anything short of that, it's not happening. And on to Ferrari. They were actually pretty good at this race. Questionable strategy with Sainz and pitting both cars right at the end of the virtual safety car period, and Sainz definitely lost out a little bit. But, compared to last year, this was a much better race for Carlos Sainz. He didn't burst into flames. That is a massive bonus. Didn't work for him last year, so not setting the car on fire. It was a good strategy call from them. And second and fourth, I think they'll be disappointed not to have both cars on the podium. But when it's the two Red Bulls stopping you from doing that, even though Perez was coming up from 15th, it was a good race for Ferrari. Perez as well had a fantastic race. I mean, you can call it damage limitation, but that's presuming he has any chance of winning the championship anyway. But scoring as much or as many points for Red Bull as he can, that's really his job. And he's doing that very well. I know he almost collided with Verstappen in the sprint race, but I mean, he's got to have some kind of fight with Verstappen, otherwise we'd never have anything. So, I mean, Red Bull and Ferrari definitely the best in the field. Ferrari and McLaren look like they've made progress, and if they can continue that, then the midfield with Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin and Mercedes, that's all getting closer, and that's not a bad thing. All those teams seem to be on it, so we'll have to see any more upgrades coming in the next few races. But I'd say probably driver of the day, if not Verstappen, then would be Lando Norris, who put in an incredible shift. He kept up with Lewis Hamilton, overtook him, and then raced on a level playing field against Perez and Leclerc. No, Perez and Sainz. Perez and Sainz did have an amazing battle. It's about 10 laps left of the race. Those two wheel to wheel for a few laps, and it did let Lando Norris catch up, but he was still in a position to catch up. So it's a fantastic drive from Lando Norris. I would say the best British driver on the grid right now, because I think Lando has done things about McLaren which are almost unthinkable. He really pushes it beyond what it should be capable of, and honestly I feel a little bit sorry that McLaren have dropped away this year. They haven't quite been on the pace, but if this is an upgrade and it's worked and they've found a bit of pace now, then fantastic, and I hope they have a lot more points scoring positions in the rest of, the last 2/3 of this race season. Piastri, though, he was not really there. I think he dropped down to 19th at one point, and I don't really know what happened to him, but for some reason he didn't have any pace this weekend, but I'm sure he'll bounce back somewhere. Aston Martin as well look like they've dropped back just a little bit, and it may be just that others have upgraded and left them behind, but I'm sure they can get back into it with another upgrade or just a little bit of soul searching. But I think Alonso and Stroll both had a good weekend. I think Stroll was unlucky with strategy, but Alonso did a fantastic job again, and I think has he scored every points at every race this year so far, so it's fantastic consistency from Alonso anyway. And whilst others were dropping it off the racetrack and getting penalties, Alonso, the most experienced driver in Formula 1 history, managed to avoid that, and that is also doing a fantastic job. Behind him were the Mercedes pair, who had an awful weekend, and it wasn't just this race, they just didn't have any pace at all. And as much as Hamilton complains that others were dropping it and he shouldn't have got a penalty, it was all pretty fair because I'm pretty sure everyone got warnings. So I mean, we'll get on to the penalties at Austria, but if Hamilton spent less time moaning and more time racing, he might have been closer to Alonso come the end of the race. He's just past it. He's past his prime. Mercedes aren't really in a position to win races. They've had their moments this year, but both Hamilton and Russell, I think they're doing the best they can with the Mercedes at the moment, and it's not working out for him. But as we come to Lewis Hamilton signing yet another contract and this whole saga dragging on, he wants, like, it was above 50 million. That's a lot of money for a mid driver, and he is a mid driver. You could replace him with anyone who is half decent. Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly. Who else is driving in this field who could do that job? Mick Schumacher? Give him a chance. Or hell, put Nico Hulkenberg in it and just let that guy get his podium for fuck's sake. But any half decent driver could do what Lewis Hamilton has done in that Mercedes over the last 15 years, however long it's been. It's only been 10, 11 years. Anyone could have done it. You put Hulkenberg in that car, he would have done something close to what Hamilton has done. I'm not saying he'd have the ultimate domination that Lewis did, but Hulkenberg, if he was in that Mercedes in 2013 and stayed there till 2023, he'd have won 50, 60, 70 races. He'd be at least a 2-3 time champion, and right now he'd be a average midfield runner, and that's no different to what Lewis is doing, and he would cost a lot less. And I'm sure someone at Mercedes can look at that and say, there's too much money for what we're getting and we should just replace him. There's a lot of people there. It's a corporation. They're going to play it safe. They're going to stick with the driver they've had for the last 12 years who's brought them all this success. They'll give in and give him whatever he wants in the end, and it's a waste of money. I think it hurts Mercedes in the future because you have an old driver who, let's face it, if he signs a 2-year contract, it's unlikely he's going to sign another one. And if he does, he'll be well and truly past it, like well out of his prime. So if Mercedes had any common sense, I would say to Lewis, look, next weekend we've got Silverstone, that's going to be your final race. Drive around, get all the applause from your home fans, and then retire. And that's it, done. And we'll stick Mick Schumacher in for the rest of the year and see how he does, and possibly replace him next year or keep him. That would be as good a send-off as a Formula 1 driver would ever get in Formula 1. If I was Lewis, I would not want to retire in Abu Dhabi, where we tend to have the final race of the season. Because who cares? Like when Alonso retired there, he was doing donuts. Vettel, he retired in Abu Dhabi, but how great would it be if Vettel retired in Hockenheim or the Nürburgring, and he just got like a standing ovation from his home fans, like his close family could all be there. It would be... I don't know why more race drivers don't think like that, especially ones who have been there so long. Like if Alonso retired in Spain, that is the most applause any man in Spain will have ever gotten. Would that not be incredible to see? But I don't know. I know teams these days don't like having drivers like swapping in and out mid-season. Back in the 70s, obviously, you had teams like Surtees who would change driver every race. That doesn't happen anymore, and honestly, it's probably for the best. But I think it'd be nice for someone who's been there long term to go out in a big way in their home country. And I honestly don't see any point to Hamilton sticking around. I don't think he's going to win another championship. Honestly, if Mercedes are at this level now, really, for the next 2 years at least, they're not going to be in a championship winning position unless they bring massive upgrades. And then you're looking at 2026 when there'll probably be a regulation change and maybe a big shift, and we've got new manufacturers coming in. By then, I think it'd be too late for Hamilton at least. So I mean, if not now, when? And is it just going to get worse for Hamilton as time goes on? Because honestly, whatever legacy he has left behind is only getting weaker race by race. And that's going to continue on because it doesn't look like he's going to get any more wins. He's not even guaranteed to get on the podium nowadays. Whereas before it was almost unthinkable. Like, I know it happened 4 or 5 times a year for whatever reason, but it was unusual for Hamilton not to finish on the podium. Now it's the norm, and it's actually surprising when he does get on the podium. I think, honestly, he has won 7 titles and over 100 races. He deserves a big celebration, whatever. But it would be great to have it at Silverstone as your final race. And he's got loads of other business interests. He definitely doesn't need the money. He's got his tax haven houses in Monaco and Switzerland and God knows where else. Probably the Cayman Isles. He's set for life. He doesn't need to do this anymore. He wants to do his films anyway. Go concentrate on that. Go concentrate on your vegan burger restaurant that I haven't heard about for a long time. Just step away from Formula 1. You don't need it, and Formula 1 doesn't need Lewis Hamilton. What it needs is new blood. It needs younger drivers. It needs to be freshened up a little bit. So Hamilton's not the only one. I'd like to see a few drivers step away, but at the moment he is the main one because his contract's up. He could leave, and he should, but I almost guarantee he won't. But that's not all I have to say about Lewis Hamilton, and I'll get onto that again in a minute. Rest of the pack, Alpines don't look very quick. Don't know what's happening with them at the moment. They seem to be dropping back down the field, but it's decent enough. AlphaTauri, they're in trouble. Their drivers are terrible. They are slow. They don't stay on the track. They make mistakes at every race. They could probably do with 2 new drivers at this point. Williams, I think both drivers did very well. I think Albon was very unlucky to lose out on points, but it just didn't happen for him. At Williams, probably still weakest team in the field. So Albon is doing a very good job regardless. Alfa Romeo, they look slow. Neither driver really looks like scoring points. And it's honestly a bit of a shame for Guan Yu Zhou because he does look like a half-decent talent, but Alfa Romeo are doing nothing for him. Haas, amazing qualifying for Hülkenberg. He did a fantastic job, and he did well to hang on in the sprint race. He got to run in second for a fair while, but in the race he dropped back and then broke down. I think he was the only retirement, so not great for him. Magnussen got run off the track a couple of times. Didn't really seem to have any pace anyway, so I don't think Haas are really having a great season. So that's the grid. So where does it leave us in the championship? Verstappen has a massive lead. Red Bull have a massive lead. No one's going to catch them. And it's pretty much done. And we have a long way to go yet. And it's very early to say that. But unless something changes, like major changes, I think we're done. And that brings me on to the stupid thing Lewis Hamilton said, I think it was Friday or Saturday. Simply just that Red Bull should be, brought back to the pack a little bit. Like the FIA should step in and rein them in. That is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Anyway, the fact it's coming from Lewis Hamilton's mouth, I mean, come on. You must realise what you're saying is ridiculous. Considering you dominated the sport in the most dominant car in Formula 1 history, you think that they should rein in Red Bull now because you're not winning. Does that not seem ridiculous to you? I mean, surely, Lewis, can you not pull your own head out your arse and get a breath of fresh air for the first time in several years and realise that that's just dumb, and especially dumb coming from your mouth? If Lance Stroll had said that, I'd say, well, I mean, if the car's within the regulations, then Red Bull have done the best job. It's not really fair to rein them in. It's your fault. You haven't made a fast enough car. But for Lewis Hamilton to say it, it's just unbelievable. Honestly, someone should have slapped him for that. I think Max Verstappen was just like, no one complained when he was winning. Exactly. And I'm sure people did. And the FIA has reined in cars when there has been too much of an advantage before, or it just doesn't like the advantage. Was it rear diffusers where they had like a several month saga of deciding whether or not they're illegal because Brawn had too much of an advantage? And I think in the end they just said, like, everyone do it. It's just the easier solution rather than ban it outright. And I think there has been things where they've banned mid-season before where it's just like, alright, what we're doing with this is ridiculous now, or it's not safe, or it's not within the spirit of the rules, which is the dumbest thing as well. The rules are written, someone's done sort of like a loophole that's given them an advantage, and therefore it's not within the spirit of the rules. If you wrote the rules and they've made a car that complies with the rules, that's fine. They shouldn't be changing it based off that. And yet sometimes they do seem to just make these rules up as they go along. But yeah, that was a really dumb thing to say. Hamilton on the radio this weekend, where he's complaining about people running off the track. Honestly, someone shut him up. And in fact, Toto Wolff did basically come on the radio and say, Lewis, everyone's getting a penalty, shut the fuck up and keep driving. Whinging constantly. And Carlos Sainz as well, when he's saying, oh, Sergio Perez is intimidating me. He's your rival. He's supposed to. I honestly think these Formula 1 drivers, they're whingier than my 3-year-old son. And it's embarrassing for grown men to act like this. It's exactly the same as footballers rolling around on the ground after getting tapped. There should be penalties for it. Just as much as if a player is rolling around pretending to be hurt in a football match. I always thought they should get a yellow card for that at least. In Formula 1, you're pressing that radio and you're just bitching and moaning. 10-second penalty. Come in the pits right now. Serve it. Suck off. Hate it. Hate the whinging. I know they all do it. But it was really egregious in this race, especially Lewis Hamilton constantly complaining that whoever was in front of him was just driving off the track and gaining an advantage and should be penalised because he got a penalty. If you're getting a penalty for driving off the track, slow down. It's not like you weren't told. Your car's not working well. Okay, well, slow down more. yeah, you're probably going to lose out. And honestly, if they're going to do that, they should probably just retire the car anyway. But because surely, like, it'd be better to save the engine and the gearbox and wherever else for the next race. But if you're going to complain about it, you should get a penalty for it. And penalties at Austria. I know this is a long video, but I think because this was a better race, there is a bit more to say. The penalties at Austria were ridiculous. If you don't want drivers driving over the white line, don't give them time penalties, because that's hard to follow for fans watching. It's annoying. The drivers were clearly annoyed by it. And it makes it look kind of amateurish that none of these drivers can keep it on the track. So what I would do is what they used to do. Have the gravel up to the edge of the track, or have a gravel trap at all. But yeah, have some gravel at the end of the track. Therefore, if you run wide, you're going to end up in the gravel. You will suddenly see that they will stop doing it. Simple as that. And even if they don't, well, they're going to end up in the gravel and get slowed down anyway, so there'll be no advantage. And that is 100% better than penalties. It's the way motorsport used to work. Tracks were better when there were gravel traps instead of huge amounts of runoff area. I'm not saying don't have runoff area, I'm just saying have less of it and put gravel traps back in place. I don't know if it was a cost thing where gravel traps are expensive to maintain, or they seem to have this feeling that if cars crash, it makes the racing worse. But sometimes when that happens, it makes the championship more interesting. When Mika Hakkinen crashed in 1998 at, I think it was Monza, or was that 1999? I can't remember. But when that happened, Hakkinen was sort of brought back into the title fight a bit, and it made it a lot more interesting. Gravel works. I don't know why it's become such a taboo word in not just Formula 1, motorsport in general. Bring back deep gravel traps, less runoff area. I don't care about cars just going off onto runoff area and coming back on. They don't lose out enough. Not enough penalty. It's not enough of a spectacle. I want to see gravel traps. You can still have massive amounts of runoff area, but just stick a gravel trap in it. And stick gravel up to the right line. So if they run wide, no need for a penalty because they're in the gravel. I know it brings gravel onto the racetrack as well when they come back on, but you know, it's only if it gets so bad that it's causing problems, it's two blokes with a broom can sort it out. It's not that big a deal. Anyway, I will leave it there because this is about 25 minutes long. Remember to subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot more motorsport content incoming. I have got stuff I've been working on. I know I've been a bit slow over the last month or so, but I am going to be doing more, so subscribe right now. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.